Okay, thank you for your comprehensive explanation. Like you say, knowledge is important, and you make with the system, but also courage is important. Knowledge, courage, understanding, and then where you get the wisdom. So I will open for the panelists. Pak Kun, Dr. Kun, are you there, Dr. Kun?
Yes, Prof. Richard.
Go ahead, Dr. Kun.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Shiva. I would like to ask the questions with regards to your U.S. presidency in 2024, and given your background in science and innovation, how do you plan to foster unity and cooperation in an increasingly polarized political climate in U.S.? And how you will emphasize the importance of bridging the political divide? And also, how do you envision leveraging your skills to create jobs, revitalize the American economy? So that's my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kun. So let's look at it this way. Let's start with the latter part of it. How do economies actually grow? Why did the U.S. economy become a $23 trillion economy, right? Or the biggest economy in the world? So where did that come from? What came from some very, very important factors, right? If you apply this concept of transport, conversion, storage, or truth, freedom, and health, you'll see why. The U.S. had the Bill of Rights, right? The first 10 Bill of Rights, which basically said anyone could speak out against their government. Very, very powerful. Only 3% of the world's population had that right. None of the British common countries had that, right? So that was quite extraordinary. This very, very interesting phenomenon called the freedom of speech. The second thing was that the founders of the United States were all people who knew how to make things. You know, Franklin was an engineer, he was an inventor, he was a scientist. Washington was a surveyor, he had a business. Jefferson was an architect. None of these people were just like lawyers or rich kids who came from top down, right? I don't know what Donald Trump has ever created, right? I call him Booby Kennedy, right? No one knows what he's ever created, right? You look at all these people who run for office, they all come top down. They would not even be given visibility on TV if it wasn't for someone they knew. None of them have ever made anything. They don't even understand science, engineering, physics, writing, messaging. Everything's done for them, all right? So that's the first thing. Compare these people had a vision that there were inalienable rights, the concept of freedom. They all had the skills to actually create things themselves and implement things. One of the things that they implemented in the United States was something called the U.S. patent system. And they did this back in 1787. The patent system recognized that when someone created something that's an intellectual property, they created protections around that. And give you an example, 33,000 businesses came out of MIT, entrepreneurs. Those 33,000 businesses today contribute to nearly $2 trillion per year to GDP every year. So that means that's pure innovation. And that was innovation when you unleashed it everywhere. Innovation and freedom are very, very closely connected. India has 1.6 billion people, 1.8 billion people, okay? When I was in 2008, when I went to India, I was recruited by the Indian government during my Fulbright to run the largest innovation center by the Prime Minister of India. Well, India for 70 years has put billions of dollars into these innovation centers. They produce nothing, 2 million in 70 years. Why? First of all, there's massive corruption. Number two, there's not freedom. It's all top down. So innovation demands freedom. By the way, when I exposed this, when I had to leave India under death threats, I wrote an article for Nature called Innovation Demands Freedom. Modi invited me back several years ago, okay? But innovation and freedom are intimately linked. So if you start censoring people and you start censoring thought, it's going to drive down innovation. The other thing is they've made innovation only that they've said innovation can only be done by a few. So if you look at the last 70 years, there hasn't been any great innovations, really. There hasn't been any major breakthroughs, okay? So the fundamental reality is that the consolidation of power has created a world where we don't really innovate any great things anymore. And so the first thing is you have to recognize that innovation and freedom are tightly connected, along with something called infrastructure. So how do we solve these things? So first of all, you have to, so that's truth, freedom, and health, right? Infrastructure health is related to freedom, right? Which is related to innovation or science. All these three things are now compromised. And that's why you have a divisive world, because when you control freedom, you never let people actually see things as they are. The division that we see right now is a manufactured division in the United States. And it's manufactured to make sure people don't unite. But the people doing the division, and even among them, when they call for unity, it's actually a fake unity. They don't want to discuss the underlying issues. So many of the people say, oh, let's heal the divide, let's bring them together. Those people, this is a subtlety here, they're actually part of the division. So the only way to overcome division is through education and through an understanding of how systems works. There was a professor at MIT called Jay Forrester. He died at 99. He was a professor until 93. He said every child should be taught system science. Everything in the modern world is a system right now. The iPhone is no longer just a phone, it's a system, right? Transportation systems, healthcare systems, election systems. And these systems understanding require a very different way of thinking. It's called systems thinking. That should be taught at the educational level. Now, the government is not going to do it. We've already started doing it. All right. So number one, it starts with the right education. So one of the things that our education policy, and we're not waiting to be elected. If you come every Thursday at 8 p.m., we're already teaching people systems thinking. So people have to be taught the right education. People don't learn how to think anymore. They're told what to think, not how to think. So the first thing is how to think, right? That's the thinking piece. That leads to thinking. The second piece is there are certain fundamental laws that need to be taken out. In November 16th, 2018, Trump, who's not a fighter for freedom, by the way, he's part of the whole system. He's the one who signed into law a law called CISA, CISA, which created the entire censorship infrastructure in the United States, voted by every congressperson unanimously. That should be repealed. So the United States on social media, there is no freedom anymore. Government and social media are like this, okay? The other thing is that the innovation rules, the patent system is completely broken now in the United States. You have to have so much money to patent now that only the very wealthy companies can patent. There's no more bottoms-up innovation anymore. All right. So there's some very fundamental issues, but the notion of division can only be solved through education. You know, only 20%, 40% of people even vote out of all the eligible population who can vote. You see what I'm saying? So in my election in Massachusetts, 6 million people could vote. Only 4 million people register to vote. Out of that, only 2 million people vote. And then they vote for this half and that half. And the reason all these people don't vote is they've given up on this system, rightfully so.